My name is Jim Caseman, and we're talking about faith. And we've been, covering in a lot of different places, faith in all of the spiritual dimensions, talking about Satan and his kingdom and heaven and all these things. We covered quite a bit of ground. And now we're going to talk about faith to finish the race. And the Christian life is a race. And to begin the race profits nothing unless we run the race all the way to the finish line in 2 Timothy chapter 4. And I'll pick it up there in 2 Timothy 4 and verse 6. 2 Timothy 4, 6. For I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Finally, there's laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day, and not to me only, but also to all who have loved his appearing. All right, so we see the Apostle Paul had a race, and he finished it, and he received his crown. So in the next sessions, we're going to look at some important things that need to be understood and are necessary in order to finish the race that has been set before us. And then, of course, in doing so, there's a couple of words that we need to define. For example, diligence is required for success in God. But without faith, it is impossible to please him, for he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. And that was Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. Now, the word diligence in the Greek means to zealously seek for something with all one's heart, strength, and mind. It presents a picture of one who seeks something so passionately and determinedly that he literally exhausts all his power in his search. And because the Greek word portrays such an earnest effort, the idea of being a hardworking, attentive, busy, constant, and persistent in one's devotion to what he or she is doing is also included. And then, of course, we have the other phrase. It comes from Hebrews chapter 6, and I'll pick it up here in verse 9. And of course, here it's talking about diligence required for success in God. And I'll pick it up in verse 9. But beloved, we are confident of better things concerning you. Yes, things that accompany salvation, though we speak in this manner. For God is not unjust to forget your work and labor of love, which you have shown toward his name, in that you have ministered to the saints and do minister. And we desire that each one of you show the same diligence and to the full assurance of hope until the end, that you do not become sluggish, but imitate those who through faith and patience inherit the promises. All right, and then we have the word patience, which we need to define. The early church called patience the queen of all virtues. They believed that if they possessed this one virtue, they could survive anything that came against them. It is this same virtue that is sustaining believers today who lived in godless regions of the world. This virtue is exactly what you need to victoriously outlast the pressures and ordeals that you may have to deal with today. And then, of course, we go to James chapter 1 and verse 14. And James is just around the corner. And we see verse 14, but each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. No, it should be 4, not 14. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. So when it says patience, that would mean patience or endurance or perseverance. And we have that, then we'll be complete, excuse me, and lacking nothing. So we need to be patient, is to persevere and to endure. Now, perseverance is to persist in pursuing something in spite of obstacles or opposition. Endurance is the ability to bear pain, hardship, or adversity without yielding, quitting, or giving up. To bear patiently, to tolerate, to suffer without yielding, lets us run the race with endurance. Hebrews 12, verse 1 tells us, therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. That was Hebrews 12:1. Now, this is the patience or perseverance of the saints, to let God take his time and through all ever to trust him. And then there's the word long-suffering. Now, long-suffering is not to be short-tempered or quickly angered with people who struggle or fail. Instead, we are to forbear with them and help them. All right. So we define diligence, patience, and long-suffering. And of course, these are all necessary if we're going to be able to have faith to finish the race. All right, and so then, now we're going to come on over to talking about this, taking up our cross and follow me. And I'll read out of the Amplified Bible and pick it up in verse 34 out of the Amplified Bible. Oh my goodness, I did too much on that one. Oh man, got too much paper going here. But anyway, we'll make it. All right, coming over here to Mark. And get a good workout here in the Amplified Bible. Get these pages all loosened up. Mark 8:34. And Jesus called to him the throng with his disciples and said to them, if anyone intends to come after me, let him deny himself, forget, ignore, disown, and lose sight of himself and his own interests, and take up his cross. And joining me as a disciple and siding with my party, follow with me continually, cleaving steadfastly. So he said we were to take up the cross. All right. And so the cross of Christ is a symbol of suffering, death, shame, ridicule, rejection, and self-denial. And when we believers take up our cross and follow Christ, we deny ourselves and commit ourselves to 4 areas of struggle and suffering. And of course, these 4 areas, first of all, we suffer in a lifelong battle against sin. We suffer in war against Satan and the power of darkness as we advance the kingdom of God. We suffer the ridicule of the world by testifying in love that its deeds are evil and by separating ourselves from it, both morally and spiritually, and by refusing to accept its standards or philosophies as our own. And fourthly, like Jesus, we may also suffer ridicule and persecution from the religious world. So we'll begin to look at those more closely as we begin the next session. But meanwhile, our time is up, and we'll see you in the next session.